So does it really count as breaking a New Year's resolution or intention if you break it before the new year even begins? Because I'm already 0 for 2. So, Happy New Year. I will see you on the other side. Happy 2025 and welcome to the new year. Welcome to this episode of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I am a knitter and a crocheter, and every couple of weeks I come to this little corner of YouTube to share what I have been working on, as well as bring a couple of ideas, hopefully every week or every episode, on how we can all take our love of crafting and do a little bit of good in the world with it. You can find me, as always, on social media at Instagram as Gary Knits, Gary Rides, and increasingly over on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. There is a group dedicated to this podcast, and I have made one of my intentions to spend more of my time over in the Ravelry world and less in the Zuckerberg world. We'll see how that goes. So far, so good. But we're literally not, when I'm recording this, not even in the new year yet. So I hope you had fantastic holidays. Got to spend some great time with friends and family, if that's what you enjoy, or all by yourself, if that's what you enjoy. It was very low-key, as it usually is for us. It's a new setup here, so if things seem a little wacky, that's why. I've got a ton to talk about this episode, because we're going to do a deep dive into all of the whips and then talk a bit about my, at least as it stands right now, my cue for 2025. I talked last episode a little bit about big picture kind of intentions and what I wanted to get done. And over the past couple of weeks, what I've really tried to do is to hone in on putting together, at least for probably the first half of the year, kind of what my cue is going to look like. So we're going to talk all about that. A lot of it was driven by another big project over the past couple of weeks that still is not quite done, but that is the great yarn purge of 2025. I mentioned that last time. We're going to talk a little bit about what I discovered when I pulled all of my yarn out. One, there's a lot of it, but otherwise we had a nice, quiet, as I mentioned, Christmas. We had dinner with our parents, or brunch with our parents, and then that was basically it. We were in and out and done back here by like 3:30 or so. We don't really do much in terms of gifts, so I got a couple of books. I gave a couple of books, and that was about it. We like to keep it relatively low key, and tonight is going to be no exception. I posted on Instagram. I can't remember the last time we left the house on New Year's Eve. We're going to stay in tonight, have some black-eyed peas, and probably watch a movie. So it'll be very, very low key. We did have some fun over the holidays in addition to just hanging out with our families, but we got to go see the direct from Broadway production of Once Upon a Mattress with Sutton Foster and Michael Urie and Anna Gasteyer, and it was delightful. It's a very fun, light show. If you've not ever seen it, it's sort of a retelling of The Princess and the Pea fairy tale, originally developed as a TV special with Carol Burnett. And it's completely silly. Not one of the greatest musicals of all time by any stretch, but the cast was fantastic, and it was a lot of fun to go into town the day after Christmas and see that. As I mentioned, the great yarn purge of 2025 has taken more than a few days of my time, and I still have a couple of bins to get through. We'll talk about that when we get into the queue, because it created some projects, or created some things that I got some things out of that I wanted to work on this year. So that's about it that has been going on. One thing I did want to mention up at the top, because it starts today if you're watching this in the new year, and I'm going to be trying to participate and play along, and that is the 2025 Yarn Along Bingo. It is run by L'Amour Knits, or L'Amour Knots. I will put all of this and everything I mentioned down in the show notes. But she hosts it, and it's sponsored by Yarnaceous Fibers and Fangirl Fibers, and so it's a lot of if you know those gals that are involved in those brands, it's a lot of their friends. So Pacific Knit Co. these are some of the prize givers: Marinated Yarns, Hat Bee Creation. So it's a year-long bingo contest, and here's my card. I think there are 4 different cards. They all have the same things, but just in different orders. And they have a Discord channel, and they do, I think, weekly Zooms, and then their quarterly prizes. You have to basically get a bingo and then post it in on the Discord, and then you're eligible for the prizes. There's all sorts of fun mini skeins for the feet, bulky weight, a new to you technique, charity knit or crochet. This is knitting and crocheting. And then there's a bunch of rules which I won't get into, but some of the projects can be a certain percentage of what you work on can be whips from a prior year. You can double dip on a couple of things where one project can count for a couple of squares a couple of times. But it just seems like a really fun project. I am not a Discord user, so I had to, I messed it up the first time, so I had to get a second help to get logged on in there. But now I am over on the Discord server, and it seems like a really fun group of people. So I'm going to try to keep this at top of mind and participate throughout the year and do some of the Tuesday Zooms. I know they reached out, and so one Tuesday Zoom I'm going to come on and just be silly and have some fun with that. So that is the Yarn Along Bingo by L'Amour Knots, and links down below on how you can participate in this year-long kind of fun project. So that's kind of it in terms of what has been going on. I want to keep this moving because I have a sense that it's going to be a bit on the long side, and we're not even going to get into every single thing that I have planned for 2025, but these are just the things that I've kind of like nailed down for sure. Before I get into the knitting, I did have something come across my feed this week that is a Craftivism opportunity, although it's a relatively quick turnaround. So if you're sitting on knit hats in particular, an Instagram user who is the Knitterly Hooker is putting together or participating in a hat drive for homeless folks. She's based, I don't know, the address that is, you'll get if you follow the link down below, is up in Stamford, Connecticut. So I think it must be in that area that she is as well. I'm not familiar with her. Someone else pointed me in this direction. But if you have hats that you've been working on, you haven't sent them away to anyone yet, and you're looking for a place to deliver them, these folks could definitely use the hats up in the cold northeast winter. So that is the Knitterly Hooker on Instagram. I will link to her post, which has the address and all of the information. She does need those hats by the 16th of December because I think they're going to be distributed very quickly thereafter. So if you have some hats sitting around, or you have some bulky weight yarn, you could whip up a couple hats in the next week or so and get those off. That would be fantastic. As always, and thank you to the viewer who sent me that link. I always appreciate ideas that people have if something comes across your feed, because I can't see everything, especially now that I've turned off social media for 8 hours of my day every day, so I'm not seeing nearly as much stuff as I used to. So please do send along any things that come across your feed that I can bring to folks here. So that is it for Craftivism this week. Hopefully we'll have some more things in the new year. I think as people come back from the holidays, different projects start to ramp back up again, and we will have more things to talk about on that front. So let's get into the knitting. I'm going to talk about FOs and active whips, and then we're going to I pulled out everything I think I found, I don't think there's anything hiding anywhere, of something that has over the years been started, and I said one of my intentions this heading into the new year was to make a decision on finishing it or frogging it. So we're going to go through those, and I'll let you know where I landed. In terms of FOs, two small ones. I talked a couple episodes back about trying to add more walking into my weekly routine. It's been kind of a mixed bag. The weather hasn't been great here, but that's probably not the best reason. It's just that I get focused on knitting and cooking dinner and things like that, and then forget that I haven't gone out to take a walk. But when I have been walking, I have been knitting and walking at the same time. So I did finish my first walking project. It is this citrus hat, which is one of my favorite charity knits, Laura Treadway, Treadling on Instagram. Again, everything's going to be linked in the show notes. Forgot to mention before, but here is a QR code. If you are not watching this on your device, you can take a picture of this and it'll take you right to the show notes. So I had started this. This is leftover yarn. The variegated yarn is Lola Bean Yarn Co. Erin Waite in the Wakabi colorway from her Black Panther collection. It's the yarn that I used for my Clapo tee that just finished up a month or so ago. I thought I had enough to make a hat, even though this is like the adult small size, but I got about up to here and was thinking I wasn't going to make it and wouldn't have made it now in retrospect. So I just grabbed some Cascade out of my charity hat knitting stash and decided to add a couple of stripes in there to help give me enough yarn to get to the end, and then went ahead and did the decreases in the Wakabi. This was going to be a hat for me. I don't love how it looked on, so it is going to become a charity hat. In fact, maybe I will ship this off to the Hook Early Knitter since it's done. It was going to go into Knit the Rainbow, but I sent my one Knit to the Rainbow package out, so maybe I'll just do that. That sounds like a great idea that I just had right this minute. So that is that. The other thing that I did finish, and I don't have it with me because it has already been sent off, and I don't think I shared this last time, but are these socks for my sister-in-law. They are done in the Always Be Kind Otter Pop Disco Stripes sock set that was part of the Stitch Out Loud yarn collection that I did last year as a fundraiser for AIDS Life Cycle. She had picked out the yarn when I launched I may have told this story, but when I launched the collection on Shopify, she's not a knitter, but she knew I was doing it. She went and looked and she's like, "Oh, it says sock set. I assume that means you get the socks." And I was like, no, it means you get an extra little skate of yarn to make the toes and heels and cuffs for socks that you make out of the regular line. She's like, "Well, if I buy the yarn, will you knit me some socks?" So I did. I said yes, of course. And we took some measurements when she was here last time, and so I finished those socks up for her. She got them. She seems to like them. She says they fit, so that's great. I did notice that I think my gauge was a little bit looser than what I had thought it was. So I need to, as I start to knit more socks, either focus on keeping things a little tighter or maybe go down a needle size. Although those are knit up on US ones, so I don't have much further down to go. So I may have just to try to focus a little bit more on keeping things tight. But it was a basic sock from the Kate Atherley Custom Socks Knit to Fit Your Feet book. We took her measurements, and it's a basic heel flap and gusset sock. So I'm glad this turned out. Want to start another pair of socks right away, but I'm holding off until one other project or so gets wrapped up. Although I think socks may be part of my walking knitting. I say I haven't started. I'll show you in a minute. I have a sock tube that I have prepared to get going on for a pair of basic socks for myself. So those are the only two FOs. I have an almost FO, and this is, as I mentioned up top, breaking your New Year's intentions before you even hit the new year. So one of the things that I did not talk about last episode, but that was an intention of mine coming out of this second half of this year, where I've had 2 baby blankets and this housewarming blanket that I'm about to show you. I don't know that I knit anything, my socks for my sister-in-law. I don't know that I knit anything for myself except for the thing that one of the other projects I'm working on. But the lesson learned out of that was, don't let your gift knitting, one, take over your life, unless that's what you want, or pile up so that all you have is gift knitting and knitting on deadlines, like multiple projects at the same time. So one of the intentions I didn't talk about last episode going into this year is I have a set of things that I'm going to be knitting for gifts. I know what they are, and to really try to cut that off. Now, I don't know of anyone that's having babies. That's how I got myself into this problem with the baby blankets this year, is I didn't know people were having babies, and then all of a sudden they were. So that could pop up. But I think since the two most likely people just had babies, maybe they won't have another one so quickly. We'll see. But the plan is the projects that I have that are slated as gifts to kind of try to hold those. So that being said, we find out that some cousins of ours are coming for New Year's brunch with my in-laws side of the family. They have a little 2-year-old girl. I've never knit anything for her. And so I said, well, why don't I try to whip up something like a fun little, like a little toy or something, just something small for her for when they come, and I can give her something that I've knitted, and hopefully it's something that can entertain her while we're all enjoying ourselves. And as part of the yarn purge, one of the things I discovered is some very, very old yarn that I have, and I have a few skeins of it, and I thought about making a little teddy bear, a pattern that I've used before, but I then found on my bookshelf this One Skein Wonders for Babies book, and I decided that what I would make is this little lovey. It's called the Granny Bunny Buddy, and it's basically just a granny square with a little amigurumi bunny on top of it. And so that is basically done. I don't have to show because the granny square piece of it is being blocked right now and it's still wet. But then all I have to do, all the other little pieces have been made, is I just need to attach those and have that ready to go for tomorrow. So I said I found some very old yarn in my yarn purge. This is basically generic, like, alpaca yarn, and I meant to check before I came on to see if this place even exists. When I first started knitting in New York, a friend of mine I discovered was also a knitter, and he was like, oh my gosh, you have to come with me, we have to go out to Queens, there's like this amazing yarn store and everything's so cheap. And this was before, this was back in the early 2000s, and so indie dyed yarn was not really a big thing. I mean, I think Koigu existed, and you could get Noro, but most of it was commercial yarns. There wasn't a lot of indie dyed stuff, and there weren't Joann's and Michaels in New York at that point. But there were a few yarn stores. But so he dragged me out. I think it was in Jackson Heights, and it was called Smilers or Smileys. I can't remember. And it was mainly all like private label yarn like this, but they had these little balls, these 50-gram balls of alpaca, 100% alpaca, which I thought was super luxurious, and they were like $2 each. So I loaded up a bunch of them, and I knit myself a scarf with them, and knit teddy bears with them, but still in the bin there are probably six and some partial skeins in, and it only came in 3 colors, so it's this off-white, a sort of dark brown, and then sort of like a pale gray. And I've used them to make little teddy bears and things in the past. So I just grabbed all the white that was left of it and made the little bunny granny square out of that. So should be cute. I have to do the embroidery of the nose, and I have some safety eyes, but I kind of think I'm going to embroider the eyes on as well. I know they're safety eyes and they're supposed to be safe, but I always worry a little bit about kids popping them off. And plus, they're just little black eyes, and I think maybe some like little blue eyes for the rabbit would be cute. So that sidetracked me. Broken intention kept me from working on some of my other whips that have been frantically trying to get done. But to be fair, I mean, probably took me 4 hours to make the whole thing. So no big loss. So those are the 2 full FOs, 1 almost FO. In terms of the active whips that I'm working on, you've seen these before. I will quickly show them. The first, and I'm making really good progress on this, is the Curdock blanket. So this is this Aran cable throw that I'm making as a housewarming present for one of my best friends. It is in a 50-50 alpaca and wool yarn called Quaker Hill by Plymouth Yarns. It's patterned by Carol Feller. Having a great time with it. I am almost to the 75% mark. I think I haven't measured it in the last couple days, but it's supposed to be about 50 inches. I mean, you can go in as long as you want, as long as I think the proportions don't get weird looking. And I thought I would use all the yarn I have, but I found in the Purge, I found some more of this yarn. I guess I panicked at some point and like bought extra. So I think I have like 3 or 4 skeins more than I would need to get it to. That it's supposed to be about 50 inches long. So I don't know that I'm going to use all the yarn, because if I have 4 skeins of DK weight alpaca, definitely that could almost be a sweater, I think. Or it may just go in with all the other stuff into the Destash, because that's a decent quantity for a smaller, for a woman or something. That may be a sweater quantity. Or I could do color work sweater with it and add some other colors. Who knows? Anyway, so that is making good progress. I've got about 3 weeks before her birthday. Should be finished with it. I'm trying to knit about 1 inch a day on it, and I think I probably have like 12 to 15 inches left to go. So that should be achievable. The other thing that I have been doing a little working on, I had this last week we had a morning get together with one of my usual evening knitting groups, because it was over the holidays. We found a coffee shop and a bunch of us got together there, which was really fun. And so I took this and was able to make some decent progress on it. This is my Botanic shawl by Stephen West. Here is a fingering weight, 2 skeins, 2 different colorways, one of which is a color changing yarn. In this case, it is Knit Picks Chroma, and the solid is Allentown is the colorway from Urban Girl Yarns. This is what my project was for my Go West knit along, Stephen West knit along. The rules were that everyone could pick their own whatever Stephen West project they wanted to work on. It started when the MCAL started, but it was for folks who might not be into the MCAL, or folks like me who had so many Stephen West patterns in their queue that they wanted to work on one of those instead of the MCAL. Very, very easy project. It's just, it starts at the narrow point and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it feels like I don't have that much more to go. I'm still not even through the first 2 skeins of yarn. And it calls for 2 of each of the colors. So I know each row is getting longer and longer. I think there are 20 repeats of the 24 row repeat. I think I'm in the 16th or 17th, so it doesn't sound like that much more. And my guess is I will get into those second skeins of yarn, but not use too much of them. So my goal is to try to get this wrapped up by end of the month. It may happen sooner. It's gotten to the size that, except for taking it locally for my knitting groups, it doesn't work in the car really much anymore, and I'm not taking it on a plane. Not that I have a plane this month, but so it should be done before any plane trips. So those are the 2 that I've been most active on. I'm counting I think this is it. Yes, I'm counting this next one as active just because it's recently started, but it is a good segue into the finish or frog it section of the FOs, which will then lead us into the yarn purge and the queue for 2025. So this is a project I started, and I'm looking for it here. I know I brought it over. Here it is. That I started after the Flock Fiber Fest in Seattle. So a group of friends and I had this idea of we were all trying, or, we had yarn we wanted to buy, but we were not trying to go crazy with the yarn, but wanted to have a little souvenir of the show and some of our favorite dyers. And so we decided to get mini skeins, and we were going to try to find a project for mini skeins, and we settled on the bubble bandana, I think it's called. Let's just say it's called the Bubble Bandana Scarf by Stephen West. I know there are bubbles and bandana in the... maybe it's just called the Bubble Bandana. I don't know. It'll all be down below. But, as you can see, I have not made much progress, and I have not touched this in probably 2 months during the mad rush to get the baby blankets done. But it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I'm doing it in 7 colors from a bunch of different dyer friends at Flock, and I love the pattern. It is a gazillion ends. I am trying to weave them in as I go, but not being super successful. But this is going to be a finish it. This is not going to be a frog it. I do want this final product. I am, when I have been working on it, enjoying it as much as I can enjoy any project where every 5 or 6 rows you're having to change yarn. But I am determined, and this is small enough and will remain small enough that it could be a travel project. It's just the constant changing of skeins that keeps me from thinking, oh, this is something I should take in the car with me. So this will probably become a knitting group project once the Botanic is done, because it's small and portable. It's if I recall correctly, the pattern is not super intense in terms of having to remember where you were, but I need to it's been so long since I've worked on it. I need to revisit it and see if that's something I can manage. If not, it'll just be a project for here at the house when I have some concentration time on my own. So that is the most recent start that is still an FO that has not gotten love, and that is going into the finish it pile. So I will say I landed in 3. I thought it was going to be finish or frog, but I kind of landed in 3 different spots. So definitely frog, definitely finish, and then the middle category is frog the project, and you'll see, and for various reasons, but eventually come back to it and restart it and start it afresh, because they're projects that I like, but for various reasons, as we'll get into, I need to restart them. So the next, and there's not as many as I thought. I felt there's, I think, 4, if we don't count the bubble scarf, there's actually only 4 other things that are long lingering FOs or whips. So I didn't feel too bad. The first one is the Pin Up Rainbows shawl. This is a pattern and yarn from Samantha at Whimsical Wood Yarn Co. This was a End AIDS knit along project, and I don't even remember when, if it was last year or the prior year. I want to say it was Pride just because of the colors, but it might not have been. And it is a 2 skein or 3 skein fingering weight shawl. Here's where I am in it. And it is assigned, that's the wrong side, it is assigned pooling. And so every time you get one of the little blips, you do one of these little rainbows. And I love the yarn, and I love the assigned pooling bit of it. My rainbows are very sloppy and inconsistent. It is also, because of the way that the rainbows get made, you have to work them on both sides. It is not comfort knitting. It takes for a fairly straightforward garter stitch scarf. It requires a lot more concentration because you have to remember X number of rows later to go back and like pull the rainbow up, and you can see right there's one where I've forgotten to do it on that side. I pulled it up on one side but not on the other, and some friends of ours have finished theirs and theirs look adorable. I just don't love the way my rainbows look, and so I think that this yarn will be better used in another assigned pooling pattern that's a little more straightforward and a little more sort of mindless. I mean, always hate to use that word because it makes me think that, that someone designed a mindless pattern, but a pattern that I can just kind of work on while I'm watching TV or something else that doesn't require a ton of constant concentration. So, as much as I love the yarn, and as much as I've seen some really cute versions of this, it's not something that I have had great success with. So I'm going to frog this and rewind the yarn and put it aside. I've got a whole bundle on Ravelry of assigned pooling projects, and I will just pick one of those and do it at some point. I don't know if this will be a this year project or not, since it's already wound up. Kind of makes me want to go ahead and put it in the queue for this year. So maybe after this initial queue, if I have some random free time in the year ahead, I will come back to use this yarn, because I love it's navy blue, which I wear constantly, little pops of color, which I think will be a really well worn shawl. But I just need to find a different assigned pooling pattern to make that work. So this one is in the frog pile, not to be restarted as the same pattern, but to be the yarn to be reused in some other pattern down the road. I've now caught the yarn in the teeth of this zipper. Anyway, this is in my Lola Bean camo bucket bag. So that is on the frog pile. I think that's the only frog. Let's do another finish. So, and then we can talk a little bit about, start talking a little bit about the yarn purge rather than do it all in one fell swoop. So, first thing I went through is I have about 8 to 10 file box size plastic bins that are kits, that are things that I have put together specific yarns with a specific pattern and put those aside as sort of like kits to work on. And that's one of the ways I sort of justified more yarn, is that I was like, oh, well, those are all kits. I don't, it's not really stash because it's kits, but I'm not getting through those as quickly as I need to continue to justify that. So I went through all of those, found, a bunch of stuff that I absolutely love, a bunch of kits that I decided, I like the pattern, I like the yarn, but this is not as compelling to me now as it was when I first put this together. So I was able to take those, 8 to 10 boxes, and I think we're down to 6 or 7 now. So I probably got rid of 10 kits of stuff. So I don't know, 20 to 30 skeins of yarn, because most of it's fingering weight. And then there were some things that I actually added to that, because there were things that I had not actually had enough room to put in there that I had plans on. And so I put some things back in there, and I pulled some out because some of them were going to join the immediate queue. In that search of just the kits, what I discovered among them were, I think, 6 advents, some of which had been sort of assigned to a particular project. So I know there's one, and I can't for the life of me remember who did these. I think it was Nancy, maybe at Trilogy Yarn. There was a Schitt's Creek. It was a Schitt's Creek. I don't know how many skein advent, but there was many skeins. That's in a Stephen West shawl kit that I put together. There's a Beetlejuice one that I know came from Treehouse Knits that I put with something else. But anyway, there were 6 advents of minis. This is not counting the 3 sock advents, self-striping sock advents that are on a shelf right behind me. And none of them have been started except for one. One I actually started and got 2 mini skeins into it and have not picked it up, and I think it's now 3 years old. Anyway, sidebar, I put up on Instagram, I need ideas for mini skein, advents. I have some DK, I have some fingering weight. I had a list of things, but I always want more, so I asked for solicitations, and y'all came through. It was amazing. I got some fantastic ideas. I put them all together in a bundle. I will link that bundle down below. I will also paste it to my link tree in Instagram, and I'll announce it over there that I'm doing that as well. I think there's 50 patterns in there as well. Some of them, there's also inside the bundle are links to other bundles that people have done. So I think there are 50 links, so that could be 75 different patterns of all different weights, all different numbers of skeins, from 6 to 24 basically. Some including a full skein to go with it. Some of them not. So I think I have enough choices now. All that to be said, I found the one advent that I had actually started, and it is, I believe it's Goosey Fibers. And if someone can remember, let me know. I do know it was, the theme of the advent was To Kill a Mockingbird. So that was a theme. I think it's from 3 years ago. And I had started the Habitation Throw by Helen Stewart. It's a very popular advent pattern because it's just sort of a add as you go, fade if it's a fade, throw, very simple sort of eyelet, garter and eyelet repeat. And this is the epitome of sort of TV set it and forget it kind of knitting. And like I said, I had gotten, I think, 3 skeins in. I have wound up two more. I think skein 4 and skein 5. And so I picked it back up just to see if I could, kind of figure out where I was. It's a very simple pattern, so I was able to do that. So once this other blanket is done, this will definitely become my sit in front of the TV in the evenings if we're watching something knitting. So it's a very pretty palette. It's sort of, it's sort of muted like this, so I think that'll be a little bit outside of my normal color sets, and it looks to be designed to sort of fade-ish into sort of nicely blend. I don't think there's going to be a lot of sudden color jumps. So this is the Habitation Throw. This is going to be a finish, no rush. It's not a gift. If it takes me all year, so be it. I would like to. I'd like to finish it this year so that I could take one of my other advents and do something with this. None of the advents got put in the Purge pile, just because I got so many great ideas for patterns, and I think they're fun. I don't know. There's something fun about not maybe changing colors as quickly as you have to on the bubble thing, but being able to work for an hour or two and then have a change of color on something that's really sort of potato chippy kind of knitting. So this Habitation Throw, it's living in a Stephen and Penelope yarn bag that came from an MCal kit some time ago. And that is going to go into the finish pile. So the 2 last ones I have, and they both are going to be in the frog but then restart pile. First up is, these are the Coasting Along MCal socks that Gabs and Che from Slip Slip Sis designed as a make-along during this last year's AIDS life cycle. So it was designed to be each day of AIDS life cycle to have a new clue came out for these socks. And if you'll recall, well, here's where I am on this is sock number 1. So I'm all the way through the heel turn, and So you might be thinking, well, gosh, you're so far along in the sock. Why do you want to rip it out and then start it over again? And so all the colors that I was using were from my Stitch Out Loud collection. So I thought this was a great sort of memento of the ride. Didn't know when we started this it was going to be my last ride, but or that I wasn't going to finish it. So each of these colors are from that collection, and I really like that idea. I really love that idea of having a little bit of each of the yarns from that collection in the sock, and I actually really like how the pattern's turning out. The problem is I didn't gauge swatch, and so I cast on the size I thought was the right size, and it's very big, and it's not going to be. It's going to be. I mean, it probably would be fine for like a slipper sock, but because we have a dog that sheds like something you've never seen in your life, I don't walk around without shoes on in the house because it's just disgusting, quite frankly. And so they wouldn't get much use. I mean, maybe with my Birkenstocks they could be warm, but I thought I'm not so far enough along in them. I've got plenty of the yarn. Why don't I just rip it out, swatch, get the right size? I also know that I made some mistakes in the first few clues. I mean, I sorted it out so that it ended up in the right place, but I could go back and do it properly. And socks are on my list this year, so I think this will get redone, and hopefully will get redone this year. I think I don't want to tackle quite as complicated a stock right off the bat. I think I need to do as I mentioned, I have these sock tubes. I want to just bang out a couple of quick ready to wear socks before I try something a little more complicated. And I do want to try some different heel constructions on plain vanilla sock this year. So at some point I will pick these back up and make my memento socks for Edie's life cycle. But I think if I'm going to do that, I want to have a pair that I actually get to use quite a bit. So that was the thinking there. I like the pattern. I just want it to be in the right size so I can use it. So that is the Coasting Along MCal socks. That goes into the Frogget Restart It pile, along with, and that's living in a little camo bag. This is a yarn and whiskey bag, which I absolutely love this print. And this is also another knit along or crochet along project that was from last year, or maybe last January. It is the Rainbow Eucalyptus Beanie from Cerulean Orchid. Jean Ann at Cerulean Orchid designed this, and we did it as a fundraiser for AIDS Life Cycle, and it was done in conjunction with Christina at Teal Torch Knits that came up with this absolutely gorgeous yarn. And I love this yarn. I love the fabric that it's making. It's probably hard to see, but it's a lot of front post, back post stitches so that it creates these little cables. And I love how it's working up. I love the fabric. It's very squishy, but I cannot for the life of me figure out where I am in the pattern. This goes to me not being nearly as strong a crocheter as a knitter and having real trouble reading my crochet in the best of circumstances. I've tried counting the rows to kind of see where I am, but I can't make heads or tails of it, and I think that it also may be a little big. I don't know. So I'm going to go back. I love this yarn. I love how it's working up. I love the pattern. Definitely going to restart this at some point. I just want to go back. Probably should do a gauge swatch to be double sure, and figure out, start over because I can't figure out where I am. I have another skein of this yarn, and I don't know what to do with it because it's so good. It's just the colors. I told Christine when I saw her, the amazing thing of it is the placement of the blips, the speckles are so tight that like they each one takes like just like one little stitch, so you don't get these blobs, you just really get these little blips of color. So I love it, but I can't figure out where I am in it, so I'm gonna rip it out, and at some point one of the intentions I have is to always have a crochet project on the hooks, and so maybe this will be one of them for later in the year, because as you will see, the queue is very crochet heavy heading right into the new year. So those are the lingering FOs and what is going to become of them. So before we get into the queue for next year, which is going to require me taking a minute to shuffle things around here, which I will edit out. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the yarn purge. So I moved from the kits where I made good progress, got at least 2 or 3 bins of stuff from there, and then I started going through the rest of the yarn, which is scattered in various places all over the house. And I'm down to everything but the fingering weight, which is the bulk of the yarn, but I made it through all my DK, sport, worsted, and heavier. I think I've probably purged so far about probably 80 skeins of yarn. So those are all going to go into a Destash for good. Hopefully I'm going to start collecting the info from folks second half of January to do something in February with it. I need to go back in. If you are a long-term Destash for good participant, we've never done it with this new platform and how that is going to work. And I'm just going to, over in the Destash Instagram account, I'll put up some questions and see what folks are interested in doing it, because it's just going to make things a little more difficult to allow other people to sell off their yarn, which I love being able to do. But because it's not all going to be done through Instagram with direct between buyers and sellers, makes things a little more complicated. So I'm just I'll kind of sit down with the platform and see what is feasible, and then see if folks are into doing that, or if it's just going to be all the yarn that I have. So, but I think I'm about an 80 skeins. I said last time I would really love to be able to get rid of half. That's a tough number to hit, because I bought all this yarn for a reason. I loved it. And so I'm going to go through the fingering. I'm going to lay it all out, because I think I have a ton of duplication in colors. I also went through my sweater quantities, and I got rid of a couple, 3 sweater quantities of yarn. Just because I think there's 7 or 8 sweaters worth of yarn at least in that tub. And if I get 1 or 2 done a year, that's a lot. And I can always, when I decide what I want to do, go out and buy more yarn. So, but the goal is to get through that stuff first. So I've got fingering left to do. I hope that I can clear out another like 30 or 40 skeins. So, be well north of 100 skeins gone from the stash, which still leaves me probably more yarn than I'll ever be able to use. But I will feel better that it's not just like bursting out of the seams everywhere. So 2 things I found. So not everything is going to work for a Destash. So 2 of the things that I found, and this goes into the second intention that I've already broken, or I'm about to break. I found 5 skeins of this. It's like knitting with like a shredded up towel. It's like super chunky chenille yarn. It's very soft, and I can imagine that it's great for baby blankets. I have no idea what compelled me to buy so much of it. I assumed that I had thoughts of making baby blankets for charities, that then got subsumed by taking out, getting more into knitting other things, and they just kind of fell to the back of the closet. So these are not going to sell in a Destash for good. I have done enough Destash for goods that I know that, well, they would probably sell, but it wouldn't even cover the cost of the shipping. So there's no sense in putting that up. I could put it up in my local Buy Nothing group, I suppose. But what I've decided to do is just to make 2 baby blankets out of them. One of them is knit. I've already cast it on. It is just a ripple, knit 2 together with some eyelets. I think that I will probably be able to finish that in like 2 or 3 hours. And then the other one is a crochet one. It's going to be, so that one is like white and blue. I have purple, I have white, and then I have a variegator that has white and purple and green and baby blue. And so I'm going to use those 3 colors. There's patterns on the inside of the label. One of them is this crochet that uses 3 skeins of this. So that is what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do with that, because it's not going to be sold in Destash. But my very first intention, the one I was adamant about last time, was no new blankets. And what have I done but gone ahead and cast on a blanket? But it's not a deadline. It's literally going to take minutes to do. So, I won't beat myself up too hard about it. The other thing I found, whereas I do not know why I bought that, I know why I bought this the yarn, and I think it was from a Destash, or someone was selling it online. I did not buy this in a store, but I have like 5 skeins of this. I mean, each yarn has its purpose, I suppose. But the reason I picked this up, and I think I only paid like 50 cents or $1 a skein of this, is my mom at one point had asked me to work on these little twiddle muff things for Alzheimer's patients in the memory care facility that is associated with the retirement community where they live. And the idea was going to be to come up with a pattern and then give it to their knitting group, and then they could make them. And I made up one, and I used some of this because one of the things that they like in these sort of sensory muff things are different textures and fuzzy things, and you put some buttons in there to give the patient something to feel. And so because I knew she wanted me to do this, when I saw these skeins for like 50 cents, I grabbed them, and I used some of it for the first one, and then she took it to their group, but their knitting group didn't want to do anything as complicated as the one that I had made. And so I think they did end up working on things, but they didn't end up taking any of the extra yarn that I had. So I have a bunch of this in 2, I think, or 3 different colors. Also not going to sell. If someone wants this, please reach out to me. I will send it to you completely free of charge. But I think what I'm going to do is just knit up some silly scarves and either send them to the thrift shop, or I don't know, maybe Knit the Rainbow would want. I don't know. They're not going to keep anyone very warm. That's the thing. I don't feel good about donating these to anything other than like a props department somewhere that might need them, because they're it's not going to keep anyone particularly warm on the streets. So what I'll probably do is just knit up a crazy scarf and donate it to the local thrift store that raises money for HIV and AIDS charities. So it's that 70s yarn from Lion Man. But please, if you have a use for this, you can. If someone can truly use this, please let me know. For craft projects, if you have kids that like to do stuff with fun yarn, let me know. I will happily send it to you. And if you want the Bernat blanket yarn as well, I'm happy to send that to someone. So just let me know. So those are just kind of 2 funny things that most of the yarn is actually really good quality stuff. There's most of it's all hand dyed indie yarn, but those were some sort of white elephant yarns that I found in the back. So let's talk about 2025 Q. So like I said, I have a couple things that I know I want to knit for gifts, and then I'm going to try to keep that held firm. And then there's a couple things that are crochet projects that I have pulled out, some of which I think I talked about last. Some of these things are going to have been referenced in the prior episodes that was kind of like big picture things. But a couple of things I've started off right away are crochet projects, or about to start are crochet projects, specifically to hats, because we have a couple of big outdoor events, like all day events that are outdoors, that we're going to probably be in the sun for. And I can wear my baseball cap. But sorry, I keep looking outside because it sounded like someone was coming up. But I wanted to try to make a crocheted, like, bucket hat, sun hat kind of situation. So I have two that I have scoped out, one of which I've actually cast on for. Give me 1 second. I'm going to rearrange everything here, and then we will get into the whips. I should have done that before, but 1 second. Okay, we are back. As I mentioned, I have two crochet hat projects that I'm going to be working on right now, heading into the spring, because the first of these events is a tennis tournament in March. And so we have we'll be outside all day long. I'm terrible in the sun, and I'll burn. You can see, like, from riding bikes, I have lots of sun marks, and so I want to have a hat, and I thought it would be fun to have something more than just a baseball cap, which I'm also can be a fallback if any of these projects work. So the first one is, and I'll pop pictures of these things up. I'll pull off Ravelry, since I have very little to show of anything at this point. But it is called Worn This Way, and it's like a raffia sun hat. And here's the little pattern. It is a pattern by Wool and the Gang, and I bought this as a kit just because to get the pattern you had to buy the kit with the yarn. But now that I have the yarn, if it works, I can play around with different colors, patterns, whatnot. Surprising absolutely no one, I went with navy blue. So I have started the crown, and I think I have a few more rounds of increases, and then you just kind of work down, and then you do the brim. This is it is, I'm not going to pull it out because it does become a mess. It is the raffia yarn. It's 100% paper. It is a little, rough to, I think it was Gail from Yarniacs worked on a project last year where she was using paper yarn, and she was like, said never again. I can see why. I can only do a couple rounds at a time. It's really hard on your hands, just because there's no absolutely, even worse, I would say even worse than like cotton yarn, because there's just no give to it at all. But I had to go down a size, a crochet hook size. So I'm doing this at a 3.5. I think they may have gone down 2, because I think they said 4.5 was what they're using. So it's a teeny tiny little hook, but the fabric looks pretty good. We'll see how it goes. It's pretty stiff, so I think the brim is going to stand up on its own. For the other hat, which is done in a more traditional yarn, I have gotten some milliner's wire to put at the very edge of the brim, so I'll have that for this if the brim gets too floppy. And I may have to play around with, obviously, this is the pattern, and you'll see, the thing. It's more of like a traditional kind of, I think, sort of Audrey Hepburn kind of hat, and maybe, and I don't really have any qualms about wearing sort of a more flamboyant looking hat to these things, because I'm to the point where I really don't care too much, as long as I'm comfortable. I'm not there to really make anyone else comfortable with what I'm wearing. So we'll see, but I may be able to, make the brim a little narrower to make it more kind of a buckety kind of hat rather than a big, sun hat with big sunglasses and all that. But we'll see how it goes, and I may be able to also, we'll see about if there's a way to do a little shaping where it's shorter in the back, the brim is less deep in the back, and a little maybe do a couple extra rounds in the front to make it a little wider in the front. So we'll see. It's been fun playing around with this yarn, and even though I can only do a couple rows each in each setting, once I have some time to devote to this, it's going to go pretty quickly. I mean, this has taken me no time at all. So I think this will definitely be done, early in the new year, and I can move on to some other things. So a lot of these early projects also are kind of smallish projects. So I'm not hopefully clogging up my my queue for too long with some of these projects. So this is the Worn This Way hat by Wool and the Gang. The other hat, and here's a picture of it, is called the Supersonic hat by Martin Up North. And it's basically granny stripe bucket hat. He has it written up in using several different yarn weights and several different hook sizes to get different sizes. I will say the pattern's a little frustrating in that there's no it's because it's written for a bunch of different sizes. It's probably going to be a little bit of trial and error because there's no do this gauge. It's basically I used this hook with this yarn and it made this diameter of head, and then so it's all based on sort of the head diameter, which size yarn he used and which size hook. I went through as part of the Purge and found a ton of Knit Picks cotton that I had bought when I was making dishcloths as thank you gifts for donors to my AIDS life cycle. So I have a bunch of different colors, and I'm just going to lay them out and kind of figure out which. I don't want it to be I'd like to have some pop of color, but there's some navy in there, there's some white in there, but I think it's olive, so all of my colors are in there. But then I think to have a little pop of color somewhere on the crown would be a nice, maybe a solid color on the brim. Again, it's granny stripes, DK weight, so that's going to go pretty fast. I'm waiting. I need to pick up the crochet hook size that he recommends, because I've now kind of learned through different projects that my crocheting is probably a little looser than whatever the standard is that people use for gauge. So I need to probably go down size there. So I need to go out and get that size of crochet hook. So I'll do that in the next couple days. And then I guess, maybe try to just do a granny stripe swatch to kind of get a gauge, and then figure out, my head measure, what my head measurement is and how that fits into the thing. So, like I said, it could be a little bit of trial and error. I think it's super cute. And I would love to have something fun like that to wear at the tennis tournament. I think that'd be really cool. So, that is the next thing that's going to be on the crochet hooks after I finish the Big Sun hat. And if it works, I've certainly got enough cotton yarn to make several, so maybe I'll make one for my husband too. And I think my mom and dad are going to be coming to that tennis tournament, so maybe everyone will get a hat. No gifts, no more gifts. So that is the Supersonic hat. The other project that's crochet that is, I'm not trying to get this one done for the May event, but in June we have a trip planned that also involves a lot of outdoor stuff, and I want to make this. It's called the Moroccan Summer Crochet Shirt. I forget the name of the designer. Here it is. And the link will be down below. So it's not on Ravelry. He has his own website. And he makes really, really great, great looking tops. Now, unfortunately, they're not super size inclusive. I think that this one, basically it's the size that it is. There's no instructions there that I could see for making a different size. Luckily, it's should be a decent size for me. But I think it's really cute. It's going to be only the second sort of garment I've ever made crocheted, and I know that doing motifs and granny squares, shaping and things like that can be a bit of a dice. So I'm kind of thinking of it as a bit of a kind of overshirt, so I'd have a t-shirt underneath it. So the exact fit isn't super important. It's kind of like this coat shirt thing that that has become my new uniform. I love them over a t-shirt. So kind of thinking about it in that regard. I bought, so this I talked last week, and I have no acquisitions this week. So this will count as the acquisitions. It actually came in last episode, but I went to Pearl Soho and got their Cotton Pure. So I got it in navy and white. What would be the two main colors? This is, I think it's fingering weight. 279 yards for 100 grams. So more like sport weight, I suppose. So these are going to be the two main colors. And then I wanted to do a pop of color, and I wasn't exactly sure which. So I'm going to knit up or crochet up a couple of little motifs and see which of these I prefer. On the more subtle side is this wild heather, kind of a berry color. I think that looks good. I think that would look good with jeans or olive pants. Basically my two things. The other one that I thought is a little brighter, more fun, could be this. We're on the more loud side of things, and this is a color called Lemon Mint. So if you have thoughts, drop them down below. But I will knit up or crochet up motifs in each of them, and we can kind of see how they all play together when I get to this stage. So this is another one where this one the deadline is sort of later in the spring, like pre-Memorial Day. I think it could be a bit of a trial and error just based on, one, my inexperience in knitting crocheting garments, and two, just how the pattern is written. I'll let that just there. It's not overly detailed in terms of the instructions. So it may be a little bit of a trial and error situation, but we will give it the old college try. So those are the three first projects, and they're all crochet, which is very, very rare for me. Also, kind of in that same time frame, I'd like to get this done before vacation this summer. I've been talking about, from time to time here and on Instagram, that my desire to knit up a t-shirt, and my frustration with the lack of patterns for what it is I'm looking for. I just want like a basic like t-shirt with like a little bit higher neck, because I don't like that. And there's just not, I haven't found a great pattern on Ravelry out there. So I think it's going to require some adjustments. But I would like to get one of those done this spring before it's summertime, and I can use it. The yarn that I picked, I think 4 different of my Stitch Out Loud colors that I thought would be cute for summer tees. And I think the one that I'm going to do first is the Ride Safe, Be Safe from Pearls Before Wine. I just think I don't have the swatches anymore because I donated them to an art project. But this knits up. It is like a really great summer fabric. So it's like a lot of blues with just like these little pops of the bright orange in there. So the pattern that I think I'm going to try first is called the Mohit t-shirt. Here it is. It's fingering weight. It's definitely more positive ease on the model than I will try to knit it to. So this is, again, where it's going to require some adjustments, I think. Also, I don't want the really long, I want mid-biceps kind of sleeves, and I think I'll probably get rid of the texture in the sleeves. So I'm hoping that just as a recipe for this is not a set-in sleeve, this is a raglan, I believe. Basic t-shirt pattern, and then maybe with some tweaks I can get the fit to where I want it to be. The other option, which will probably require less adjustment, but maybe more or different kinds of effort. I think I showed this before, but in my search for a t-shirt, one of the patterns that I found was only available in a Red Heart book from 1947. Cost 10 cents at the time, and Esther Etter was the original owner of this. Her name is on the front. I found it on eBay, and so I bought it. This is it. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, not necessarily the stripes, but that silhouette is exactly what I'm looking for. So this is called the Crew Captain, and it only came in 3 sizes, which tells you a little bit about like what people's shapes were back in the 40s versus today. So it only comes in like a 36, 38, 40, which is fine for me. But again, it is the entire pattern is on half of a page. So that gives you a sense on like the limited amount of detail that they provide. It's basically just like cast on, knit a sweater. So it's going to be a different kind of work than the other one where I'm going to have to be making adjustments. This I'm going to have to be like sort of making a pattern. But if I could get something that looked like this, it might be worth going through the process, taking really detailed notes, and then using that as a template to make a pattern that you could be graded in more sizes and put out there. Just because maybe I'm the only one that's ever wanted this, but I've been frustrated by the fact that there's nothing that's like a t-shirt fit that's isn't going to require a ton of adjustments, or that. So that's going to be my first t-shirt project. I don't know which one I'm going to do. Part of me just wants to go with the one that's all written up already, and just kind of see how it goes and see how much of the adjustments I need to make. If it's just a matter of taking out some of the knitting a size smaller to get rid of some of the ease, and probably my guess doing some short row shaping in the back to raise the back of the collar, because that's usually my big issue with most of the men's sweater patterns is I don't like the way the necks fit. So we'll see. But the one that the Mohent t-shirt I think is one of the closer ones I've seen in Ravelry of the direction I'm looking for. The next thing, and this kind of, we'll stop right there and we'll come back to that because it segues into the next section. So the other thing that was one of my intentions was to knit another sweater for myself. I don't count the t-shirt as a sweater, even though technically it's just a short sleeve pullover. But the first sweater that I wanted to make for myself is just a very basic navy blue cardigan. I have gone back and forth in Amy Herzog's book. I'm looking for it. Ultimate Sweater Book, it's called. I've gone back and forth on whether I wanted to do the basic raglan cardigan or the basic set-in sleeve cardigan. I think I've now settled on doing first. I will do them both eventually, but I think I've settled on first on doing the set-in sleeve, just because it's something. Well, I've never really done a raglan either, but I just like the look of it better, and I think it has a little bit more structure to it, a little more tailored look, which is kind of what I would like to have. It is going to be as basic as you can get. I'm using the Sierra Sport base from Treehouse Knits. This is from her Stranger Things collection from a couple years ago. This is Dream a Little Dream. It is just a very, very dark midnight navy, almost veering towards black. So luckily it's going to be no patterns, just stockinette. So that'll make things a little bit easier. But if in that book, if you're not familiar with Amy Herzog's Ultimate Sweater Book, it has basic shapes, so pullovers, cardigans. I think that's it. Maybe, I don't know if there's a vest in there or not, but basic crew necks, V-necks, cardigans. She does raglan, drop shoulder, set-in sleeve, circular yoke for each of those, and then has each of those basics in like 3 or 4 different weights. So there's like a worsted DK and Sport, or each one varies a little bit. And then she gives you, based on your gauge and the size that you want, like basically a formula on a pattern all written in there. So it's a really, really useful book for basic sweater silhouettes and in various weights of yarn. So I'm going to do the sport weight version, just given where the climate we are. But I think that'll be great. So I'm hoping, even though I have all these other little projects, I'm hoping to get swatching on this one and just kind of have this as an ongoing. There's no deadline for it. I'd like to have it before next fall, because that's when I'm not going to get it done by April when it starts to get hot here. So if I could get it done by August, September, because it's a lot of just back and forth stockinette without a lot of shaping for a good portion of the back, I think it would be just a good one that I can pick up and take with me to knitting group or whatever, and I'm not having to think about until I get down to the shaping and all that stuff. So that is the basic set and sleeve cardigan from Amy Herzog's book. The last thing that's sort of like locked in right now is the first of the gift knits. There's a couple that had a baby last year that we're friends with in New York, and we kind of lost touch. We reconnected at a big group thing in Santa Fe earlier this fall, and it just so happens that their baby girl shares a birthday with me. So I said, well, I have to knit something for my birthday twin, and so I decided I'm going to knit something out of this book. I did George the dog for friends of ours in Italy a couple of years ago. A really, really fun project. This is an amazing book, and she has Louise Crowther has a couple of these books, but they're all adorable, and they all have these little clothes that you make for them and that you can mix and match. I'm not about to get into like making a whole wardrobe for this little doll, but you can pick and choose between the outfits. But I'm just going to make this one as she has it written up or shown, and I'll show it to you here. I'm going to be making Tilly the hare. So as this rabbit has this adorable little color work cardigan and then a dress underneath it. I've already gotten all the yarn, so it's all written for Shape Yes, either stonewashed or Katona yarns, and so I just went ahead and I found them on, I know, Lovecrafts, I think, and got all the colors that I'm going to need for this. And this needs to be done by birthday, so that's middle of the summer. So I've got some time on these. They were usually, the dog, it took a while, but it wasn't like this long, laborious process. Quite frankly, for me, the toughest part of these is the sewing the pieces together, because seaming is not my forte, not my happy place. And I do know the other thing that I need to remember from George the dog is to be very aggressive with your stuffing, just because you don't want just a floppy dog. You want to have a little bit of structure. So I'll probably get cracking on that sometime. This is a pretty good travel project, because you're just working on like little bitty pieces at a time, then you can just throw them in your bag and collect all the pieces before you put it all together. So this actually is a pretty good travel project. I don't have a ton of airplane trips in the first half of the year that I can think of off the top of my head, but that might be something to think about as I prepare for. I have some road trips. That car knitting, that might be pretty good car knitting stuff. It is a little fiddly because you are working on such small pieces and there's lots of shaping in there, so you kind of have to pay attention where you are in terms of increases and decreases. So I'll just look at the pattern and see if that's something I can easily carry along with me. But that is the first of the gift knittings. The only other gifts that I have, so that is the first of the gift knitting. As I mentioned up top, I only have 3 things currently planned for gifts, and I'd kind of like to keep it that way, but we shall see. None of these have a particular deadline to them, except for the stuffed animal for the birthday. These are just things for people that I've always wanted to knit for, and I haven't had a chance to knit these projects for them. The first is called the Zigzag Scarf. You've probably seen this. It's been around forever. It's a fairly simple, I think, chevron scarf. It is inspired by the Missoni fabrics that have this sort of chevron pattern, and you do it in two color changing self striping kind of yarns blended together, so it breaks up the colors and creates this very sort of Missoni effect. And so I wanted it for one of my best friends who always says that like his great childhood trauma is that his mom and dad never bought him a Missoni scarf, and so I thought it would be very funny to knit him one. So I've had this yarn, and these were things that I found as I went through the kits. Like I knew this was in my queue on Ravelry, but I came across the yarn and I was like, you know what? Let's pull that out. Let's make that happen this year. So it's 4 skeins. I think they're 50 grams each. Let's see. Yeah, 50 grams. So 200 meters. So it's fingering weight. 2 skeins of 50 gram, 2 50 gram skeins. 4 in total. 2 different colors. My goodness. And they are Lang Lang Mille Colori Baby. So one sort of brights, and then another that's a little more subtle, sort of blues and grays. And so yeah, it's basically 2 fingering weight project, 2 skein fingering weight project. So it should move pretty quickly. Again, this I think is going to be a great travel project. It's just a simple chevron pattern, and my guess is that you're alternating colors every so often, maybe every row, maybe every few rows to create that blending. But it's never going to get more than 12, 14 inches wide, I think. So that's a great project to take in the car, take on the plane, take to the symphony, take to the Hollywood Bowl, all the places that I travel. The goal is to have this done sometime for next fall, so that it's ready for next winter for him. The other and the final planned gift project is going to be a Stephen West shawl. It's the Marled Magic shawl. Here's the picture. And this is inspired. A friend of mine is a self-taught freehand. She's an artist, super creative, but quilter, and she makes these amazing quilts without a pattern and just does them kind of free form and hand sews everything, and they're unbelievably gorgeous. And so I have knit for her before. I knit a cowl a couple years ago in orange, and she likes bright colors. And so I thought I'm just going to go through the Marled Magic is a fingering weight shawl, modular, but you can mix and match as many colors I think as you want. And so part of the yarn purge, I have a gigantic tub now of partial skeins of fingering weight yarn from probably 80 grams down to 10 or 20 grams, and some probably even smaller. So I'm just going to pick a bunch of really fun, bright, wild colors and just marl them all together and make this shawl that's sort of inspired by the way that she quilts. And I'd like to have that done for her sometime before the fall as well, and hopefully be able to make it back to New York sometime in the second half of the year and deliver that in person to her. Because I think it's gonna be a fun project. It may be my only Stephen West shawl project this year. I may do one late in the year when the mystery knit along comes around again. I may grab another Stephen West kit from my kits and do that again instead of doing the mystery. We shall see, but I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a really fun project, and I'm really excited to take some of those, hopefully make a big dent in that box of fingering weight scraps. So that's it for the gifts. So the only other 2 patterns, no, I have 4, sorry, that I've sort of tried to nail down. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 projects. sort of identified, then that feels pretty good. Like I put in that I wanted to do 30 projects. 2 years ago I did 30, I think, or I did 26, and I put in for 30 that I wanted to do 30 this year, and I ended up doing, it says 18. I know they're more than 18, but I didn't track everything. So I think having 13 like solid plans is a pretty good number to kick off with. Some will drop, I'm sure. But the last 4 that I have that, and then we'll talk about some sort of, what do we call these? A spur of the moment, but just kind of on the go projects that I'm going to have going. And this came out of the kits as well. Pardon the crinkles if you hear them. But I actually had 2 kits, 2 of these kitted up. This is the Night Shift from Andrea Mowry. And I had 2 different kits kitted up for him. So I pulled one of them out and I was like, well, let me make it. See if I like the pattern. I mean, I like the way it looks, but let's see if I have fun knitting the pattern. Sometime in the last year or so, Modern Daily Knitting had a sale on Spin Cycle, Dream State, and they had the original colors from the original sample of the Night Shift. So I grabbed all of them, and I just thought, I like the way that looks. Let's just do it the way that it was originally done. I don't know if there's original order that I need to follow or anything to make it look exactly. I don't know how important that would be. But I have a bunch of Spin Cycle yarn. I've only used it once in a hat project, and so I was like, oh, it'd also be a good chance to use up some of the Spin Cycle that I picked up over the years. So this is the Night Shift. It's going to be for me. It's no timeline. So I think once I get through the blanket and the botanic, we'll see where we are in terms of how quickly I feel like I need to be knitting another shawl for myself. I love knitting shawls for myself. I don't know that I always need to have one on the needle, so maybe sometime this summer I'll pick these up and start on them. But that's one that's coming out of the kits into the queue. The other one that has been, I actually thought I would have started it by now, and it was meant to be a project for this fall. So I don't know if this will be the first shawl that I start this year. All the yarn is already caked up, ready to go. That is the Sunwalker shawl by Melanie Berg. I am going to do this this is also Stranger Things yarn from Treehouse Knits. This is also Dream a Little Dream, but it is on her Tweedy base. And so in addition to the super dark navy, it has these little flecks of color. I don't have a navy shawl. I want a navy shawl. This is the one that I want to work on. Who knows when I'll get it started, but it's staying out and about, so that if the mood hits me once some of these crochet projects are off the hook and I'm like, it's been 3 months, I haven't worked on a shawl, I can have that one to go to. Or one of my other intentions was to do a Tunisian crochet project this year, and again, apologies. The one that I had, I think I had a couple of them already in my kits, but this is the one that I decided that I will pull out because I've seen this in person when I took my Tunisian crochet class with Tony Lipsy a couple years ago, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It is the Loveland shawl. Here's the picture. And I will be doing that in another Treehouse Knits yarn. It's a DK weight shawl. So this is Land of the Living from her Cocoa collection. And I'm going to be pairing that up with this Magpie Fiber Swanky DK. Both of these are MCN blends. And this is their olive camo-y color called Adela is the Greatest. So I think those will be fun together. I'm excited to get started and work on a Tunisian crochet project this year. I've only done it once. I enjoyed it, but I would like to pick it back up and dust off those skills. So now the only last true pattern that I have pulled out and set aside to work on during the year, and this is something I mentioned last episode, is a doodle. I have been a big proselytizer for the doodle bar, the doodles, when I see Yarnacious and Fangirl and Pacific Knit Co. and L'Amour Knots all at the booths at various events with their doodle bar. I think it's such a great concept. They're so cute. And I want to do a doodle something this year. So I've had this yarn forever to do it, from when Jamie came out with her very first doodle project. I think her first one, which was the Holiday Doodle Cowl and Hat. And so I got this yarn from Madeline Tosh. This is Tosh DK in greens and reds and an off-white, to do a doodle hat and cowl. I don't know if I'll do both of them. We'll see how it goes, but I would like to do one or both of those, to have them ready for the holidays next year. So let's say, by end of October, to have those done. So again, this seems like a early fall, late summer kind of project, but that will fill out another one of my my knitting intentions. So those are all the ones. I guess, like I said, I think it's about 13 projects that I have set. Hopefully we'll smoothly get through all those and have time to pick up a couple of other, bigger projects. I think I will. I've mentioned up front that I want to do more walking. I have my little yarn to go from Hap B Creations, and I'm hoping to always have a project with me, most likely a hat, although maybe a pair of socks if I can figure out I may end up, doing just a long tube and then do the cut in the heels and things like that for socks. But hats or socks probably on the walks. And the other thing that also could fall into that category, as part of the Purge, I showed you all the cotton I had. I also stocked up on just cotton yarn back when I was doing, I don't know how many dishcloths I thought I was going to need making for gifts, or if I thought there was going to be a multi-year project. But I have bunches of skeins of Dishy from Knit Picks, as well as a couple of big cones of Dishy from Knit Picks. So what I would like to do, first try to get through all the partial skeins, and then then see where we are, is use some of that. We're a little light on dishcloths, so I may make some for us, but to make soap sacks for sacks. I've mentioned them before, but here's a little extra bonus craftivism. If you don't know SACS, S-A-C-K-S, it's an acronym for something, I can't remember, but they have free patterns and they have resources for places that you can send. Basically, you just knit a little dishcloth around a bar of soap, and they are given out in food banks and other places for folks. They found that toiletries were some of the highest request items at homeless shelters and food banks, but not a lot of people donated them because they think food. And so this way, you do it with a bar of soap. They have their soap and their bag all and their washcloth all in one place, because they're all made of cotton. They dry out, they dry out relatively quickly, and so they always can have that with them. So I'm going to try to, and that's actually a pretty good project, I think, to take with me on walks. I would like to crochet some of those, so that could also count as one of my always have a crochet project going, but I don't know if I can crochet and walk. I know I can knit and walk. I don't know if I can crochet and walk. So we'll see. The other things will be socks and hats. To that end, part of the Purge was going through. I had so many swatches and samples from filming my Knit Stars that I wanted to rip them out and get the yarn back. Some of them there's a brioche one that I can't. I mean, I could rip it out, but it's not going to yield much useful yarn. But I had a bunch of things that I was able to rip back out and get some yarn. And one of the things that I found was I had knit up this, basically a sock tube with a bunch of different self-striping yarns, and I was just showing in the class, talking about the different types of self-striping yarns that there are out there on the market. So I've had this sort of Franken-tube, and so what I've decided to do is not make a hat that looks like this, but this also was part of a swatching project. Had a bunch of this gray fingering weight from Knit Picks, And I've started a sock head slouch. And so what I'm going to do is once I get past the ribbing, I'm just going to alternate one row of the gray and one row off of this sock tube. And so it's just going to blend it a little bit together. So it'll still look striped, but it'll just be a little more subtle than if I tried to knit this into a hat. So that's going to be my first new to go project. I can't really put the sock tube on that spinner thing, so I think I have one of these little to-go pouches that I can just clip to my belt loop and carry that with me. So I think that'll be the first one. And then I have another. I mentioned I had some sock tubes that I had cranked out as part of a fundraiser that someone was doing earlier this year, and so I've got one of those set up to turn into a pair of socks, and so that'll be another, doctor's office waiting project at some point down the road. But I think socks and hats are good walking around projects. So this has gone long. I apologize, but I told you up front there was a ton to get through. I would love to hear what you have on the queue for 2025. I forgot to mention, and I meant to do it when I was talking about my botanic shawl, but I have grand prize winners for the Go West cowl, and I'm going to pop those names up here. So if that is you, reach out to me. There are 2 grand prize winners. I basically just put everyone who participated, the names in the hats, so everyone had an equal chance of winning. And so those are the 2 names that I picked out. And if you shoot me an email at Gary Knits, Gary Rides, or reach out to me via DM on Instagram, I will coordinate with you and get you a prize in the mail. So thank you all who participated. It was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of beautiful projects, some of which were new projects to me from Stephen West's catalog. So maybe we'll do this again next year for folks who don't want to necessarily do the MCAL. I did have a little bit of FOMO this year in terms of not doing the MCAL because I actually liked the way it turned out, but I can always pick it up down the road. So I appreciate you sticking with me this episode a bit longer than usual, but I hope you enjoyed the chaos that I've now created in this room by pulling out all of the things that at least I'm hoping to work on for the foreseeable future in 2025. I hope you had an amazing New Year's Eve, and I'm hoping you're able to take today for just some relaxing and knitting, and thank you for making me a part of that. I will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much.